Hello, everybody. Hello, job seekers and people that are looking to work on your careers. Welcome to the chat. I am Bill, the company's expert, and it's great to see you here. Today, we're going to talk about something that I haven't talked about that often on this channel, and that is how to keep your job. And we're going to talk about some best practices and other things that you can do. Now, this is starting to be a concern to some people, because if you follow the news, there are some weird things going on in the labor market and in the world of economics right now. And like a lot of things, is probably going to end up being practically nothing, but you never know. So some people are a little bit more nervous about this. So I figured I'd do a live stream on this topic, something I've never actually done a regular video on my channel, I believe. So that's going to be interesting. But there are 15 people here. Thank you for being here. It's great to see you. Thank you so much. If you're here, say who you are, say where you're listening from. I always get a kick out of that. Even if I completely bastardize your name or the name of your country, I apologize for that in advance. It's unintentional. And yeah, we'll go from there. I'm going to start out talking about how to keep your job, and we're going to get into questions in a little bit. So, yeah, welcome. So, yeah, and remember, there are no stupid questions, just stupid people. I'm just kidding. There's not a lot of stupid people, and there's not a lot of stupid questions either. I've never really encountered a lot of stupid questions, so certainly not here. So ask anything if it's on your mind and it's related to job interviews or employment or careers. It's all fair game. I'll do my best to answer. And if I don't get to your question, if you know the chat scrolls too fast or something like that, leave a super chat, because I will prioritize all super chats. I'll make sure that I give them the attention they deserve. So let's see here. We got Raphael. Greetings from Dubai. Hello, Raphael. And Andrea from Italy and Hungary. Awesome. So Italy is Rome, capital of Rome. The capital of Italy is Rome. Hungary is Budapest, right? Budapest. Romania is Bucharest. I always used to get those two mixed up. And Matt is here. Good morning, Matt. I'm glad you can make it. Yes, so this is something that people have been wondering about, and this is actually kind of a topic that, how can I put this? A lot of people don't want to go there, because if you're honest about this, it can sound kind of bad, okay? So I'm just going to preface everything with that. Also, there's, before it even started, there's Arap from Kenya, capital Nairobi. So hello, Arab. Yeah, you know, I don't see a lot of people talking about this, and I don't see a lot of people really being honest about it when they do talk about it, in my opinion. Because the thing is, you know, when you work as an employee, you are a cost. This is the unfortunate truth. You are a cost. Where do you show up on the balance sheet of the organization or the income statement? You show up as an expense, as a cost. That's what labor is. In the same way that they would buy materials, right? Supplies, those would be resources, okay? Or they would pay for energy, right? Electricity or gas, whatever, to power their installation. In the same way, they have to pay for labor, right? And if you're an employee, that's what you are. And in this wonderful world where you have businesses and you have employees, unfortunately, a lot of businesses don't have a very benevolent attitude towards workers, and you are regarded as a cost to be reduced. And what's the first thing that they do when their quarterly financial results are down? They look to cut costs, and they look to cut costs with their labor force. And that actually is what gives us the name human resources, where the idea was, this was in the sort of 50s and 60s where they came out with this. The idea they were going to treat people just like any other resource, like materials or energy or any other input to a business to produce a product or service. And that means they weren't going to treat people like human beings. They were going to treat them like materials, right? And as a result, things like layoffs became started to become a regular thing, if their profits were down that quarter. And this is some people's fears, okay? And any job you have, you're going to have this fear. Usually it won't turn out to be grounded, but occasionally it is. And so a lot of people are wondering, how can I keep my job? If there's going to be layoffs, is there anything I can do that will reduce the chance that I will be selected to be laid off? Okay, and that's what we're going to specifically get into today. So yeah, it's a very kind of unfortunate thing. And that alone, a lot of people won't kind of admit, it's bad for the public image of HR because HR is very schizophrenic. On the one hand, it wants everybody to think that they are compassionate and they treat people like human beings. On the other hand, they are rooted in philosophies that treat people not like human beings, but like resources with a lot of dispassion. So that's the problem. Let's see who we have here. We got Diana. Hello from Dublin. Yeah, Ireland. Alvaro, precisely. Budapest. Excellent. It's good to be right. It's good to be right once in a while because let me tell you, I'm wrong a lot of the time when it comes to this stuff. Hello from India. Kabir. New Delhi, right? It's still New Delhi. And Matt Johnson. I'm a grad student looking for a job and I just found your channel. Now, I want to get back to Arap, who was the first one out of the gate, who said, from Kenya, good evening, asking, do you need to keep an eye to keep on applying for jobs even if there are no openings? Next, how do you customize your cover letter to remain relevant in your application? Okay, first of all, regarding the cover letter thing, I have a video on my channel. If you do a search in the YouTube box called The Company's Expert Cover Letter, I have a video that describes that. I can't really get into all the details of how you would customize a cover letter, but the bottom line is yes, okay? The more customization you bring to your cover letter or to your resume, generally speaking, the higher chances of them selecting you for an interview, okay? The problem is that isn't always super practical, okay? Especially if you're applying for jobs online, you have to do a high volume of jobs to get anywhere. So there's a bit of a conflict there. But yes, the cover letter, you should explain how you meet all the requirements and why you're applying and what you can bring to the role in a perfect world. I tend to recommend people have a very minimum cover letter. Don't make it any more wordy than you need to. And as for your first question, do you need to keep on applying for jobs even if there are no openings? Yes. I speak extensively about that on this channel, okay? People start out applying for jobs by answering job postings. That's how a lot of people start out. It is actually not, in fact, the way most people get hired. Most people get hired through networking, and they get hired in what's sometimes called the hidden job market. That just means jobs that are there, but people don't post because they usually can fill them very easily. So why spend a lot of money posting a job, hiring recruiters, doing rounds and rounds of interviews when you may know someone or you may know someone who knows someone that would be perfect, and they can vouch for that candidate and give them a good personal reference, okay? For example, the son or daughter of an employee, a trusted employee that you trust, their son or daughter, if they're qualified for the role, you might want to hire them simply because they have a personal recommendation, okay? They have something that no stranger does. They have a personal recommendation, okay? So anyway, this is a huge topic. The bottom line is that you can use networking. You don't need to know a million people. You don't need to know anyone. What you do is you proactively go out and you contact managers and organizations, people that have the authority to hire somebody, okay? You proactively reach out to them and say, hello, I'm here, I can do this. If ever you're looking, let me know. And already you jump to the top of the pile because they're impressed by the fact that you have the professionalism and the drive to reach out to them. And if they had a pleasant encounter with you, like a pleasant communication or conversation with you, that's an insight into how awesome you are. So they already know this, okay? As opposed to you sending in a job application, you're just a resume. They don't know you. And for all they know, you're one of those people that applies to a million jobs. You don't even know what jobs you're applying for. And they don't like that, right? So check out my channel. I've got tons of videos on this. I go into great detail. Yes, it's worth doing that. Matt says, I'm a grad student looking for a job. I just found your channel. Well, congratulations. Hopefully it's helpful for you. Kabir says, I really want to thank you. Your videos have really helped me in interviews. Great. That's great to hear. Hello from Tunisia, capital Tunis. Right? Turkey Master. That's an awesome name. It's good to be known for something. Ibrahim says, I got hired at the end of 2021 and your videos helped a lot. You are a great man. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ibrahim. It's very kind of you to say so. I'm glad that it helped and it's good to see you prospering. So that's great. Yeah. So coming back to how to keep your job. If you're worried that your organization or your company might be laying people off and you've heard rumors or there's a bad vibe, sometimes you don't have control over that, but sometimes there's a few things we can do that might help our employer look more favorable on us, okay? And if there's any discretion there for our supervisor or our immediate manager to pick and choose who they're going to lay off, if they have to lay off, say, a certain small percentage of their employees, okay, there's some things we can do. Number one thing I'd like to recommend for stuff like that is human interaction, okay? Being visible, it shouldn't matter, but it really, really does, I'm afraid. Okay, so if you have a supervisor or you have a boss and it's up to them, or at least it's up to them to make recommendations of who they keep and who they let go, if you are visible, that can really help, okay? If you have interactions with your boss on a regular basis. Some people have jobs where their boss doesn't really come around and deal with them hardly at all. You know, that's a common situation, actually. You know, they might be one worker out of 50, and those 50 employees might have two supervisors looking over them, reporting to them. And you might get a new supervisor, and the supervisor has to familiarize themselves with 25 people. And that's not quickly done. It's not easily done. Okay. And some people are extroverts. They like to be more outgoing and have more conversations and stuff and more interactions with people. Other people are introverts, and they tend to not enjoy that stuff as much. So they tend to not do it as much. They can be just as good at doing the social interaction as extroverts. Okay. It's not like they're worse at it. They can be just as good. The difference is that they don't enjoy it as much. It's not what they choose to do for fun. So if you have control over what you do, you tend to shy away from it because it's not what you enjoy. So if you're an introvert, you can be at a little bit of a natural disadvantage there. I'm an introvert, and I know how you feel if you fall under that category. But being visible really matters, okay? If you get along with your boss, that really matters. If you get to know your boss a little and they get to know you, that's a really good thing, okay? Because people develop attachments. It's a lot easier to lay off the person that they don't even know and they never talk to. It's a lot easier to lay them off than to the person that you see every day and you know everything about and you know is a big part of your work life. So that's definitely a factor. You know, when I get on a roll, I notice that the chat stops. And that means I better stay on a roll because no questions are coming in. Yeah, you know, the being able to interact with your boss, being able to stay visible, that stuff matters, and it shouldn't. There's a lot of people that are quick to point out that that stuff should be irrelevant. It shouldn't be a factor in deciding who stays, who goes, or who gets a promotion and who doesn't. You know, things like this. This is, for want of a better word, office politics. Okay, workplace politics, power politics. And we talked about this the last live stream I did. This is a part of business. It's called organizational behavior. It describes the weird behavior you see in organizations, how decisions are made, you know, things like this, who is looked on more favorably, et cetera, et cetera. And sometimes when you look at this stuff in a workplace, it seems totally ridiculous the way it's done. It seems completely stupid and unintuitive, and there's no rhyme or reason for it. But once you learn things like organizational theory, which is like how people behave in an organization, and you learn some of the psychological and sociological concepts that are going along, a lot of this stuff falls into place. You know, so it's a really cool topic. If ever you have a chance to study that stuff, it helps explain a lot of what we see in the workplace. But yes, being visible definitely is a factor, a big factor. Here we go. Matt Johnson says, I don't drink, so I was at a disadvantage at my previous job. Yeah, that is a common scenario where it's almost like a little clique, right? All the supervisors or managers or whatever level you're at, they all socialize together, right? They do stuff outside of work. And that helps maintain that close-knit connection between them. And as a result, they look favorably on each other. But it's not, the drinks and things don't happen because, generally what we see is the drinks and the socializing doesn't happen because they're a tight-knit group. They end up being a tight-knit, it's a Wednesday morning. They end up being a tight-knit group because of the socialization. That's the advantage. And for a lot of introverts out there, I'm not saying you need to do stuff that you're totally uncomfortable with. But what I am saying is that you need to realize the importance of that stuff, okay? What we talk about on this channel is, you know, how people get jobs, how to further your career. And a big topic within that is who gets selected during the hiring process. In the recruitment and selection process, you know, how do you get the job? First of all, how do you get the interview? And then how do you get the job? And as a lot of people who are doing this, you guys know, you know, you can have many candidates that are technically qualified to do the job, right? You can technically do the job. You're perfectly qualified. There'll be other candidates that are technically qualified to do the job. It doesn't mean that everyone has exactly the same background. They may have different experiences, different qualifications, different traits, but each one of the candidates, you know, like the sort of short list of candidates, maybe there's 10 of them, maybe there's 3 of them, they could all do the job. That's not really the deciding factor. So the way this stuff usually works is people look at other factors to determine who's going to be the one they select, right? And it comes down to things like your communication style and your personality and how you are to communicate with and how you are to work with, how professional you are, you know, this kind of thing. You know, these sort of intangibles, right? They're sort of soft skills, right? And that usually becomes the deciding factor. If you're interviewing with a hiring manager, the hiring manager, you know, once you get down to the short list of candidates who are all technically qualified to do the job, the hiring manager usually will end up selecting the person they like the most. Because after all, they're the ones that have to work with this candidate once they're hired. So you're going to select someone that you get along with, right? If they crack a joke and you don't find it funny at all, or you don't get it, or you crack a joke and they don't laugh, things like this, it sounds so stupid, but it's like it comes down to silly little things like that, right? This is why I say that a lot of job search, it's a numbers game. It's just, there's a huge factor of random chance. Sometimes you get a hiring manager that's just like you. Sometimes you get a hiring manager that's completely the opposite of you, and you have no control over that. You can make yourself look good, but I mean, there's only so much you can adapt to, right? A lot of times it depends on the situation. So these same factors apply not just in getting hired, but in retaining your job, in keeping it. So yes. So how do you say your name? Juhao says, how do you get some visibility? Well, let's say you had a supervisor, okay? And the supervisor is supervising 20 people and you're one of them, okay? Don't be the person that they never talk to. Don't be the person that never talks to them. Don't be the person that, I wouldn't say is antisocial, but like never sort of participates, never volunteers, avoids communication, avoids greetings in the morning. You come in to work at the beginning of your day, and some people say, "Hello, boss, how's it going?" And you're the person that never says that. You just kind of keep your head down and just keep walking past. Don't be that person. Okay, that's what I'm referring to when it comes to visibility. Make sure they know who you are. Make sure they know a bit about you. And you do that by being friendly and going up and communicating with them, not pestering them, just being social, okay? That's how that starts. And if they're looking for volunteers, like I said, you volunteer occasionally, you participate if they're looking for participation. If they're looking for compliance, they come out with a new rule or a new requirement or a new, like a guideline. They make a suggestion. Okay, everybody, I'd like you guys to do this going forward. Don't be the person they have to tell 3 times to do it. Say, sure, no problem. People tend to like other people who behave like that. And you are the same. If you were the supervisor yourself, and I mean, we're all supervisors. Maybe you have a family at home. You tend to like it when you say, hey, everybody, could we do this? And people say, sure, not a problem. You tend to not like it as much when people kind of ignore you or people just don't participate. So you do that stuff as much as practical at work, and that's how to get a little bit of visibility, okay? Matt says, leadership liked to go out for drinks after work. Yes, we talked about that. Turkey Master, when would you say is a good time to leave a company you're working for? Well, I mean, there's multiple ways you would it would be right to leave. That depends on your personal situation. Obviously, the number one factor is probably your financial situation, right? It also depends on whether you have another job lined up. Okay. It then depends on the quality of that job. It depends on your personal goals. Like, you might be making money, but you're doing a job that you have no interest in. You want to be you want to be a career musician, but you've got a job in accounting. The accounting job might be paying well. You might like the people there. You might be secure in the job, but it's just not what you want to do, right? I mean, that might be another factor. There's a whole bunch of factors. I think you will know when, it's the right time to leave a job. From the perspective of your career, if you're worried that you might have too short a term at that job and that might raise red flags for recruiters and things in the future, I think generally anything over 2 years in a job, that won't be a factor. Okay, if you're staying at the job less than 2 years, then it might be a factor, depending on your industry, your seniority, and a bunch of other factors. How to gain the trust of coworkers when you are new. Free Guy 2.0. I recognize you, Free Guy 2.0. You've been on these before. Well, look, being friendly, being sociable, not having a problem with every little thing, just having a positive sort of friendly attitude and demeanor will help, right? If someone asks you to do something, what they're wanting to hear is for you to say, sure, not a problem. If there's always a problem when they ask you to do something or they ask you anything, they're not going to regard that as favorably. I mean, that's normal human behavior. Now, there's a little more controversial thing, depending on what industry you're in. Some industries, how can I put this? The culture is a little bit, I don't know how you describe it, a bit traditional. And there might be what you might term as hazing or initiation. Okay. I worked in the railroad for 8 years, and that was a pretty tough culture. People are pretty gruff. And sometimes they will sort of initiate a new employee. They will give them a hard time. They might play practical jokes, that kind of thing. Like, obviously, that can flip over into outright bullying. Okay, so if it flips over into that and it's clearly bullying, that's something else. But, a very mild form of it, maybe a joke at your expense, when you're new or whatever, you have to laugh with people. In the beginning, depending on the culture of the organization and the work group you're in, you might have to roll with that a little bit. And if you get all upset and take it all personally and really blow it out of context, that can be sort of like a failing of the test, if you sort of just roll with it and say, oh, ha, ha, wait, okay, yeah, good one, but not like take it personally, that can be regarded favorably because that's what people, rightly or wrongly, that's what they're wanting. That's the kind of reaction they're wanting, right? When they do that. Okay. I just want to make it very clear that we're not talking about sort of really malevolent stuff here, like, bullying or abuse or anything like that. I'm just talking about normal kind of kidding around, that kind of stuff. Okay. So don't be like super sensitive and very, very quick to take offense at every little thing. Sometimes we can't help that. It's part of our personality, but that can be a factor depending on what we're talking about. But basically just, the sort of intuitive, simple things. Just be friendly, be a little bit outgoing. If they're asking for volunteers, volunteer. If they are looking for approval or support, give that approval or support. Don't be the aloof kind of person that just sort of hangs out on their own, doesn't socialize with anyone. Okay? As much as possible. We all have different personality types. This comes more naturally to some people than others. But what I'm saying is that that's the kind of behavior they're looking for. So just keep that in mind. Matt Johnson, does social media play a role in keeping a job? I don't have social media. Well, that depends on the job. It does for some. It's likely a factor for some, but for others it isn't. So it really depends. Yes, you got my name right. Thanks for the pointers on how to be visible. I can truly appreciate and understand where you're coming from. Yeah, it's hard for me to cover every possible situation, and but these are general principles, okay? Touch a fairy, not easy to get a job. It depends. Yes, it's for some people can be a real challenge depending on your situation and the environment you're in. But just keep in mind, there are many ways of getting a job, okay? If you're only doing one way, okay, that's probably not a good thing. If you're only doing one thing and it's not going anywhere quickly, consider looking into some other ways of getting jobs, okay? I've covered them on my channel. Okay, there is the most obvious, like I've said, is networking, and there are many, many things within networking. Okay, so check those out. Do your own research on those, and don't just listen to me. Listen to a bunch of people, of other people too, a good cross section of people, because depending on your situation and your level and your industry and your region and all that kind of stuff, there's going to be different things you can do. And remember, when you're getting a job, you're trying to sort of elevate yourself above a crowd, right? That's the whole point. It's hard to elevate yourself above a crowd when you're doing the same thing that everybody else is doing. That's another factor to keep in mind. Turkey Master says, I currently work a job for 2 weeks that requires overtime. Most of the team stays overtime. But if I were to consistently leave on time, would this be unbeneficial to me? Yes, it can be. It shouldn't be, but it can be. You are absolutely right. You see, here's the unfortunate side of it. It may not be possible for you to work overtime. Maybe you have family commitments. Maybe other people don't, right? Maybe you have more demands on your time outside of work. Maybe your coworkers don't, right? Nor is it an absolute requirement of you doing your job, right? When you sign that offer letter and you have an agreement with your employer, they say, you know, this is going to be the working hours, and you agree to that. And what you're describing here is, it sounds like it's outside of that original agreement. So is it fair to now unofficially require you to go beyond your original agreement to keep your job? Yes, it is unfair. However, it might be what the reality is. Look, you have to read your situation correctly. Everybody has a different situation, and so it's hard to give specific advice. But yes, you are absolutely correct. If you suspect this, okay, chances are, like where there's smoke, there's fire. Chances are there might be something there. If possible, if like, I'm just giving sort of general advice, I don't know the details, but if it were me, and you are concerned about your job, or you're concerned about possibly not getting promoted in the future in favor of somebody else, here we have another situation where you have a group of employees, and let's say they were going to promote one employee. There's a new position opening up, and that means somebody can move up, right? Who are they going to pick? Well, a lot of times it comes down to this kind of stuff. All the employees are good employees. They're doing their job, right? But are there some employees that are going above and beyond? Okay, if the answer is yes, then all things being equal, they would be the biggest contenders for that promotion. Okay? There are other factors besides this, but this is definitely a factor. Okay? So if you can occasionally, and you're worried about this, see if you don't have to work as much overtime as everybody else, but at least put in an appearance just to show that, yes, I'm committed, I'm dedicated, and, I'm willing to go above and beyond, if necessary, just so that they receive that message. Okay. If you can swing it. Okay. If you can't swing it, well, you can't swing it. But if you can, it would be something to put in for if this is a real concern to you. Okay. Matt Johnson. So would it be a good idea to ask about cultural expectations during the interview process? Well, here's the thing. A lot of this stuff is unspoken. Okay? They're not going to say in a job interview, well, officially you should work regular hours and that's fine, but unofficially everybody here should work overtime if they expect a future. They're not going to say that because there can be some legal consequences for like officially saying that. The people in the interview may not even be aware of some of this stuff, depending on who you get in the interview. If you get a recruiter, they're not going to be aware of some of the cultural elements of that particular department. Okay? And you don't want to ask anything in an interview that's going to in any way signal that you're like a problem person or you're going to have an issue in the future. Like if you're asking about something is like, I just would like to know what your policy is on, like I would like to know more about your disciplinary policy, or I'd like to know more about your drug testing policy. Things like this. The fact that you're asking those questions can be interpreted as you are at a higher risk of having an issue with discipline, following the rules, or with drug testing, So you don't want to raise any red flags in the job interview by asking things that they could interpret as a red flag. And this question could be one of those, right? I know you say this, but what really goes on? Like that kind of thing. They could interpret it like that, and they'll be like, well, I don't know. I think this person might not end up being the greatest employee. They might have some issues with things we do here, stuff like that, right? So generally speaking, if it was me, I would not ask that. Other than visibility, what can we do to keep our job? Okay, excellent question. Another factor for keeping your job, okay, is recognizing, and this is another thing that a lot of people and a lot of sources of information, in my opinion, they're not really honest about this. They don't like to admit it. But look at the hiring process, okay? Look at what people place value on. They tend to hire in their own image. They tend to hire people that place value on the same things they place value on. I talked about that concept, I think, the last live stream I did when we were doing the Let's Talk Business live stream. Okay? So, for example, a manager who has a background in accounting will tend to place more value on the candidate who has a background in accounting. The manager who has a background in sales will tend to place more value on the candidate who has a background in sales, right? And so on. That's what I'm talking about. And it comes down to really mundane things too, silly things, totally silly things. You dress like the boss. The boss, maybe you have a boss that dresses up, maybe a little more than they absolutely need to. Okay, they wear a tie every day. Maybe they don't need to. Maybe they work in a machine shop or something, and you don't really need to. I know you're the supervisor. You don't actually operate any machinery yourself, but you're walking around with a tie. It might be a little above the dress code that you need, right? Maybe the machine shop was a bad example because I don't think you're allowed to work in a machine shop with a tie hanging down. It's a safety hazard. But, that boss then interviews several candidates for a job, and one of them wears a tie to the interview. The other ones look like the typical machinist. They wear a sort of polo shirt or, whatever to the job interview. One candidate wears a tie, and maybe the boss sees that and goes, I can tell that you place value on similar things that I place value on, right? So I like you, right? Before I even really get to know you, you're looking You're looking favorable. Okay. I see some things about you that I like, right? Maybe you have the same sense of humor as your boss or something like that. Okay. So the decision makers, they're human beings, and we all think like this. We all tend to think more favorably of people that place value on the same things we place value on. Okay. Should things work like that? No. Right? You can make a strong case that things shouldn't work like that. Unfortunately, they do. A lot of times we see this out in the real world. And, you know, it's just a factor. I'm not here to try and make excuses for it, and I'm not here to try and say it's good or condemn it or anything. I mean, yeah, it's bad, but we need to recognize this, because recognizing this will help us get ahead. If you show up to a job interview and you already look like you belong there because you're dressed the same as everyone, in that particular place, they all look the same, they all dress the same sort of way, and you show up looking like one of them, you look like you belong there. Before you've even opened your mouth, you look like the candidate. Okay? Next candidate, they show up in a dinner jacket with a, in black tie, like with a black bow tie and a white shirt. They look like they're going to a dinner party or something with rich people. And it's like they don't look at all like they belong here. Everybody here is in a totally different dress code, and this person shows up totally different. Like, before that person even opens their mouth, they don't look like the person. And they now have to change the minds of the interviewers. They have to talk themselves out of, their opinion, right? The preconceived opinions that people have, right? So people gravitate to aspects of other people that they have, right? And I'm not talking about like the things that people usually refer to when they talk about diversity. I'm not talking about gender. I'm not talking about ethnicity, religious belief, sexual orientation. I'm not talking about any of that. So I'm talking about more your background, your personality, your sense of professionalism, your communication style, the sort of general demeanor, if you're serious or you're more light and sort of jokey and warm. You know what I mean? I'm talking about that. Okay. And personal traits. Okay. So knowing this, if you have any insight into the person that you're dealing with, whether it's a supervisor, either in a job interview or you're trying to keep your job, trying to get that, knowing this will help you. Okay. If you mimic somebody's communication style, or, that kind of thing, that will help generally. It also is things like expectations. Okay, if you worked in a job where, the boss told people, the boss gave workers instructions. And it was a very sort of lax kind of environment. People were joking. The boss kind of said, I'd like you to do this. And people sort of took that as sort of a general guideline, not as an order. The employee then went off and interpreted those instructions as they saw fit, came back and said, well, this is what I did do. And the boss says, okay, that's great. Right. You have that sort of work ethic, or that's the kind of culture you're used to working in. You then try and get a job in a much more strict environment where the boss gives instructions. They want you to obey them immediately. They want you to do them exactly as you were directed. They don't want you to interpret them or change them in any way. They don't look favorably on you coming back and asking questions about how they want it done. They expect it done immediately and exactly the way you were told. They don't expect you to think or bring any of your creative sort of decisions into that process at all, right? If you have the same sort of expectations and sense of culture as that supervisor or that manager, you will be looked favorably. You will be regarded favorably. Okay, so things like that. Okay, like that's also another factor. People tend to place value on the things that that they have. So the more you resemble them in these ways, the more you click as people, the more favorably they regard you. So hopefully that makes sense. Bruno says, I think I am not being very productive at my current job. I'm already there 6 months and I feel that I'm not learning much. How to deal with this situation? Well, one possible way you could do it, if it's appropriate in your situation, is to go to your supervisor or your manager or whoever your direct boss is and go to them when it's convenient, not when they're under stress, not when they've got a million things to do, and say and take the direct approach and say look, I really enjoy working here, but I feel that I could be learning more. Is there a way that I could perhaps be exposed to more of what goes on here? Or someone could maybe, I could shadow somebody, I could follow someone around and they could explain more of the process to me? Because I feel I'm capable of doing a bit more. And I was just wondering if that was something that there's an easy solution for. Something like that. Okay. It leaves nothing to the imagination. You don't have to rely on people just intuitively getting that you're feeling this way. You just state it in a friendly, professional way, in a way that doesn't indicate that there's any kind of problem. It's just you're capable of doing more. You're just wondering if you could take advantage of that. If you phrase that correctly and if the situation dictates, bosses love to hear that kind of thing. Now, don't get offended if they say look, it's just not really possible right now to devote any more attention to you or change your duties right now. We're concerned with sort of these production quotas or whatever's going on, and it's just not possible for us to deal with this right now. I hope you understand. You say not a problem. Just please keep it in mind in future if that situation does change. Something like that. Okay, very positive, very friendly. You're not creating a problem for them. You're just sort of bringing to their attention an opportunity if they take it. If not, it's no big deal. That's how I would do it. Hello from Bangladesh. Capital of Bangladesh used to be Dhaka, right? At least it was 40 years ago. I don't know if things have changed. No problem, Matt. Okay, so Matt says also, so what you're saying, for example, is a hiring manager is more likely to hire someone who has the same educational background, i.e. accounting. Is that correct? Generally, yes. Generally. There are great exceptions to that, depending on the situation, but all things being equal, people tend to place more value on something they have than on something they don't have, okay? And I use the example of manager because you can be a manager or a supervisor with many different backgrounds, right? You could take a salesperson and turn them into a manager. You could take an accountant and turn them into a manager. You could take someone with a technical skills like an engineering degree or a technology degree or qualification and make them a manager. You could take someone who doesn't have any educational qualifications, but they have a lot of experience, years of experience in the job, and make them the manager. You could take someone who's a great sort of people person, they have a background in psychology or sociology or counseling or therapy, and make them a manager. So I use the manager role as an example, as a role that people with many different backgrounds could do, and they would all do it a different way. and they'd all be more or less equally effective. Okay? But if all the decision makers for a job all have a background in sales, guess which candidate they're most likely to hire? The one with the sales background. That's generally what we see. We see that in other ways too, in personalities. If all the higher ups are extroverts, they're sort of raging extroverts, they're always socializing, they're always cracking jokes really loud and, telling stories. Will they really appreciate the candidate that has the degree in mathematics, that is quiet, that has a background in research? To be a manager? Maybe not. Even though that candidate might have a really big advantage when it comes to being in charge of a sort of highly technical department, or operation. Like maybe they have a background in scientific management or, quality or just science, like they'd be able to work on technical problems and solve them much better than any salesperson would, as long as we're talking about problems with technicalities and not with people, But they will be overlooked if all the decision makers all have a background in sales. That's what they know. That's what they place importance on. They look at everything through the lens of sales, right? Now, some things you have control over. You have control over, how you relate to these people, how you interact with them. If you know that the person is very bubbly, very extrovert, you can sort of push yourself a little to be more extrovert than you normally would be in interacting with them, right? Because chances are they place value on that, right? Sometimes you have a decision maker who's an introvert, a brilliant technical person, like an engineer. Engineers are incredibly bright, generally speaking, but they have one huge blind spot, and that's that they're not very endearing people to work with. They're very difficult people to work with. They don't have very advanced social skills, generally speaking. I can say this because I have a degree in engineering. I've worked with engineers for many years, and yeah, that's kind of what I've encountered. Maria says, what if you are an introvert and want to get your job done in a timely manner and don't like to socialize? LOL. Well, Maria, join the club. Welcome to the club. Yeah. Okay, here's the deal. First of all, I want to say I feel your pain. That pretty much describes me and a lot of other people. Approximately 50% of all people are introverts, but you wouldn't know it because the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? The people you always hear about are almost always extroverts. They're the ones making all the noise, right? The introverts are out there, but you don't really hear from them much, so they tend to be less visible. And you're absolutely right. You want to get your work done, and you view socializing as this thing that's of very limited value. Whereas the extroverts, chances are viewing the socializing part as having much more value than you do. Okay? I'm going to tell a very quick story that might help illustrate this. I've told this story before. I'm sick of... I should get more stories, but this is the one that really fits here. Many years ago, I was a manager and I had my own sort of department, and there was another manager who had his own department, and we did not get along. He was very, very extrovert, sales background. I was more introvert, technical background. And unfortunately, we had to work together. We had to interoperate a lot on a lot of different projects in a lot of different ways. And tempers flared, put it that way. And our boss, who was the president of the company, said, he took both of us aside and said, look, you were awesome, okay? And that other guy, he's also awesome, but you guys are polar opposites, you know? So I can see how there's a lot of friction. Like I can see the friction when you guys have to work together. We need to find a way to deal with that, okay? So here's what I want you to do. I want you to go out for lunch with him, okay? That person that you kind of can't really stand, go out for lunch with them. And I kind of said as a joke, yeah, well, who's paying? And he said, the company's paying. So I was like, whatever. Okay, fine. I guess if I'm ordered to do this, whatever. We went to lunch. It was awesome. Even though we did not like each other, we were forced to, have like a lunch. The whole stupid thing took like an hour, but we were talking about, sports. We were talking about other like things all outside of work. I discovered that this guy had actually a lot more in common with me than I assumed. It turns out he had lived on the same street as my parents for many years, like or something, just a couple of doors down. And there's all kinds of other sort of link ups there. And after the end of this sort of, it was like an hour long or something, this lunch, we weren't enemies, if you want to use that word. We were kind of friendly to each other. We kind of respected each other. And this happened like 20 years ago, whatever. This was, it just opened my eyes to like, okay, look at that. That's amazing. These big work problems that make you not want to go to work because you got to deal with people. Bam, that was just solved in a day by a little bit of this socializing. And that started to open my eyes to like, okay, maybe there is something in all the stuff that the extroverts do. It smooths over a lot of things. It reduces all the awkwardness. At least that's the experience I had on that occasion. So, I mean, introverts are not going to be placing value on a lot of the socializing the extroverts do. They see it as a waste of time, something it's a distraction, a sideshow from what you should be doing, which is doing your job, doing the work, right? But you realize that there's a place for both of those, okay? Just like you can't socialize all the time, that would be a bad employee. You also can't ignore that stuff all the time. That would be a bad employee. From a technical sense, you're doing your job, but there are a lot of disadvantages, a lot of issues being created by sort of not having that element in there. Okay, so, so I mean, this is the thing. You've got to open your mind. And if you want to move up in your career, generally speaking, you have to be able to get along with people who are not like you. That's the key. Everyone can get along with people who are just like them, right? If you meet someone who has the same sense of humor, the same interests, the same background, the same opinions, I don't care who you are, you can get along with that person. I don't care how antisocial you are, you can get along with them. But what the real challenge is being able to interoperate in a favorable, positive way with somebody who's not like you, who's the opposite of you. You're an introvert, they're an extrovert. You're young, they're old. You have a background, you have a lot of education and little experience. They have no education and, lots of experience, like the opposite. That's a challenge. But if you want to be in charge, if you want to be someone who's a people manager, which invariably a lot of advanced positions are, you also have to deal with people and deal with them favorably so they pick you and they like you. You have to get along with people that aren't like you. So you have to open your mind to some of this stuff. I'm starting to fall behind, but hopefully that makes sense, Maria. Moonlight says, when recruiting participants for research to contribute to science, is marketing this service more like buying or selling? What is your opinion? What? When recruiting participants for research to contribute to science, okay, so you're hiring a researcher type position, is marketing this service more like buying or selling? What is your opinion? I don't fully understand what you mean. If you are recruiting somebody, you're going to want to make the position as attractive as possible. Okay. So in that sense, you are trying to sell it. Okay. But, you might have different candidates before you, and you have to choose. And some candidates, they may require more money. They may require certain things. Maybe a more qualified candidate will have more wants, wills, and needs than a sort of more basic candidate who's maybe fresh out of school, doesn't have a lot of experience. Okay, so in that sense, you are buying. You are deciding, should I buy this product or this product? In a way, it's kind of both, right? What you're doing is you're trying to find a match, right? That's what this process is. So it's like buying and selling all at the same time. Hopefully that answers your question. I don't know if I'm really grasping exactly what you're asking, but feel free to elaborate if I didn't answer that right. The mind says, "Thank you for your great answers. Honestly, you are so." Trust me, it just comes with doing stuff for many, many years, and everybody will get there. If you've been at it, for many, many years, and you've moved around a bit, so you've seen different ways of doing things. Matt Johnson says, "Yeah, I'm an engineering student and a veteran, and I haven't been meeting any hiring managers with the same characteristics. Thanks for the feedback." Yeah, so if you meet a hiring manager who's got that engineering link with you, a commonality, play to that. If you meet a hiring manager, maybe they're not in engineering, but they're a veteran or they're in the military or whatever, you have that link up, then play to that, just recognize that those traits in you will probably be looked on favorably by these people. Okay. So, and if you're talking to a veteran who doesn't have a background in engineering, don't play the engineering card a whole bunch any more than you need to, right? Because chances are they don't know much about it. They don't place a lot of value on it. All things being equal. There are a lot of exceptions to this, right? But this is the general rule. Hello, Bill. The sort of content you make is really helpful. Keep up the good work from India. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I don't know how to say your name. Is it Lucifer? A nice humble name like that. That's good. Instead of Bill, I should just go by Almighty God, and then, I wouldn't get too big for my britches. Matt Johnson, I jumped out of airplanes for Uncle Sam, and I'm not a typical engineer. Airborne. Ah, awesome. It's like the 82nd or the 101st or all that. I'm not American, but I just, you see that in World War II stuff. So, yeah, right on. Well, hey, you've done some stuff. It's good to have done some stuff. No problem. Lucifer, I will be starting my corporate career soon. You should go by the name Lucifer when you do. Just wear a red suit, and things will just take care of themselves, put it that way. Any insights for beginners just starting out on their career would be helpful to me. Oh, that's a good question. Different people will need sort of different advice where you're coming from. It depends what your goals are for your corporate career. When you say corporate career, like, if you're trying to climb the ladder, okay? One thing, I'll just start saying random things here as they occur to me. Number one is, personally, I don't have a lot of faith, and I never have, in promises of good things to come. When they say, just work this menial job for now, and if you work out, then we will promote you later to this other amazing thing that you really want to do. I've never been a big fan of that. I've personally seen a lot of people burned that trust that kind of promise. It's basically saying, stand in line, wait your turn. Okay? Now, if you are qualified for something, and it's reasonable to expect that you should be able to do it now, okay? You shouldn't have to accept like a sort of like stand in line, wait your turn, we'll give you that when you've proven yourself, like this kind of thing, okay? If you're qualified now to do it, you shouldn't have to accept that. And if it were me, I wouldn't accept a lot of those promises. I wouldn't put any faith in them. Second thing is be open-minded. When we're young, when we're in our 20s, we know it all. Okay, we are not wrong. We are just out of school, but we know everything. And everyone's an idiot but us. That's kind of generally the experience of being a 20-something. Now, don't get me wrong, that can be very good because it gives you unbridled energy and enthusiasm and passion, and that's great, okay? Especially if you have a sort of like slightly rebellious kind of attitude. Why do we have to do things this old way? Why can't we do them this new way? Right? Okay, that is the thing that drives change. That's the typical 20-something experience. The 30-something experience is, I went and tried to change things, and I was crushed and defeated, and now I'm unsure of myself. That's the typical 30-something mentality, okay? Maybe I should settle down. Maybe I should take this seriously. Maybe I should listen. Maybe I should have an open mind about these things. That's the typical 30-something attitude. And also where you start to develop a lot of ambition. Because you've still got that energy, but, you've developed a little respect. I don't know how a way to say it without being rude. And then in your 40s, a 40-something experience, that's when you sort of settle into your kind of, this is what I do, right? And, the problem with 20-somethings is that they get taken advantage of a lot. They think they know everything and they don't. I thought I knew everything. Everybody I know that's like, in their 50s now, they thought they knew everything in their 20s. And some people just went out and did some stuff. And most of the time it failed, but they learned a hell of a great deal. And I fall into that category. A lot of people fall into that category, But the thing is, then you can speak with authority later on when you say, this is going to work or this is not going to work because you've seen it or you've tried it. A lot of people never try things, so they don't know. They're just going off advice, what they were told. Usually it's wrong, right? Okay. So when you're in your 20s, don't take major financial risks. Don't take a big financial risk that's going to screw you financially for like the next 10 years. Because I see a lot of people do that. What happens then is they then settle down. They become responsible and they get like the steady job and then they have to pay back their loans and things. That's a shame because in your 20s, you could take that fire and that passion and that energy and try some stuff, right? If you're not going to screw your entire life trying it, try it. That's how you learn. And no one can tell you any different because you know for a fact because it's your own experience. It's not advice that you've passed on. It's something you know from personal experience. Nothing beats that. So anyway, this is kind of scattered, but those are a couple of things. Okay? The reality is that it's hard to say this without it sounding bad, but you don't know as much as you think. There are so many things out there that you are unaware of. Go and start finding them. Go and start seeing them. Okay? Don't just stay in one place doing your menial little thing. Do something that's a bit of a stretch. If you have butterflies in your stomach, it makes you a little nervous. Okay? Go for it. Assuming you're not taking major financial risks that will screw you for decades. Okay. That's the key. Okay. I know that's easier said than done, but that's like the sort of general principle. Okay. Don't be afraid of stuff in your 20s. Okay. Do it intelligently, but now is the time to go out and go for it. Try stuff. And I guarantee you that even if it fails, you will benefit because you learn. And then later on, you know what you're doing. You have it figured out because you've learned from experience. Hopefully that makes sense. I'd love to be able to do just a live stream on that stuff. That's a great question. Thank you for the question. The mind, how to act when your boss behaves badly with you. Should we accept it and lower ourselves or not? Great question. Listen, everybody is going to draw that line in a slightly different place. And I certainly can't tell you what to do in your specific situation, but I will say that sometimes you should take it and sometimes you shouldn't. Okay? It depends what type of person you are. If you're a person that shies away from conflict, you find conflict profoundly unpleasant, okay? You don't have to confront anyone over anything. Don't get mad, get even. If you're in a toxic environment, you've got a toxic job with a toxic boss, and it doesn't look like they're going anywhere anytime soon, okay? Sometimes the best thing to do is to take that energy, that frustration, and channel it into finding a better job or a better source of income, okay? And then you leave, okay? My personal opinion is that it's not your job to educate anybody else. You do what's right for you. If your boss is an idiot, your job is not to educate them that they're an idiot. Let them go on being an idiot. Sooner or later, it's going to really bite them in the ass. You know what I mean? Don't waste your time on that, okay? You do what's right for you. So if you've tried to fix the situation, you've sort of said to your boss, look, I really don't appreciate when you do this. Would you be able to, you know, if you have a problem with this, could you please maybe communicate it in this other way? I'd very much appreciate it. If they throw that back in your face and they like, nope, you're just, you know, it's like, okay, well, I got my answer. It's not going to change. And, you know, I have no control. You have control over nobody but yourself. Okay. So knowing this, you create a better opportunity for yourself. You move to that. Okay. And as an added bonus, it also ties in with what I was just talking about experiencing new and different things, especially when you're young. Okay. However, on the other side, you don't want to be so hypersensitive to like, oh, they looked at me funny, I have to quit my job, right? You know what I mean? It's a job. They have to pay you to be there. It's not going to be smiles and chuckles all the time, okay? You know, but there is a point where it flips over to being unreasonable, okay? And when you're young, you don't know what's reasonable and what's not reasonable until you've been through both of those conditions, right? That's the other thing. You sort of get a feel for this as you get older, you know? And a lot of organizations, they like to engineer this. They like to explain to you that, oh, this is normal and this is typical. When in fact, it's not normal. It's not typical. You're being exploited. Okay. They're just telling you this stuff. They're lying to your face because they know that most people will believe them and stay when it's not to your advantage. Right. Other times your boss is actually just a nice person, but they had a bad day. It's not the end of the world. We all have bad days occasionally. You know, if it's something that's within reason, you don't want to leave a good job just because of that, right? So you're the best judge of it, and you will get a better feel for what's reasonable, what's not reasonable over time. Many years ago, like I said earlier in the chat, I was in the railroad for 8 years. I came right out of university and into the railroad, and very tough culture. You know, people would yell at each other. I was threatened. I was threatened to be being beat up at work. I was threatened to have somebody send their friends over to my house and beat me up at my house. I mean, and that was not considered a red flag, believe it or not. That was that weird culture. And you meet all kinds of people. I remember very early on, I met a particular individual that was basically a bully. And I was 24 years old or whatever I was, and I got bullied by this person. And, and then I stepped out of character one day and gave it right back to them, made them feel unpleasant, made them not like the encounter, and they never did it again. And that kind of sent me the message. It's like, okay, they're making it unpleasant for you, you make it unpleasant for them. Now, this is the kind of crap that you learn in those types of environments. It's probably not the greatest things you need to know for life skills. I was fortunate that I left that entire industry behind. Like I rose up in it and then left it behind. And, you don't need to know that stuff if you're in a reasonable situation, right? So hopefully that makes sense to mind. That's kind of a scattered, rambling sort of thing, but hopefully that makes sense. Maria, you're absolutely welcome. Matt Johnson, United States Marine Corps, although I jumped with soldiers from the 82nd, 101st, and Rangers. Yeah, those divisions have been around for a very long time, haven't they? At least the 82nd, 101st. Mr. Beast. That guy creeps into everything. Touch of Fairy. Again, Touch of Fairy is here again. I think it's not safe to work with one man for a lady. Okay. Anime Neo. What if you do if you consider that your boss is less skilled than you? Well, there's two possibilities. Either you're working at a bad place if your boss is less skilled than you, or there's something going on you're just not realizing. See, that sounds like 20-something thinking. If I had to guess your age, Anime Neo, I'd suspect you're in your 20s. Okay. Now, that being said, we do see this sometimes, right? There's a lot of idiot bosses out there. I'll be the first to admit that. And that's mainly because people just don't have very good people management skills. Everybody thinks that, you can just manage people without any training, without studying it or knowing what to do. The people that end up doing that end up being usually quite bad bosses. The mind, you're perfect. I like your answer so much. By the way, I think you're not just a company, but also a spiritually awakened person. Oh, that's the compliment of the day. Thank you very much, the mind. It's very kind of you to say so. Look, I'm just sharing what I've learned over, my life experience. And I mean, this stuff, obviously, I mean, it applied to me. It may apply to you. It may not apply to you. It depends what situation you're in. It depends what type of person you are. But the thing is, like, the bottom line is that you can listen to advice, like whether you're reading a book or you're listening to somebody like me or, whatever, you're listening to your parents or your family or whatever. It's all secondhand information, right? You're never as sure of something as when you've done it yourself. Nobody could tell you something is wrong or something is not possible if you've done it. You know what I'm saying? I don't care who they are. I don't care if they're like the highest authority, like a Supreme Court judge or something, telling you, no, you can't have done that when you have, right? It's like you want to talk about what gives you confidence. It's having done stuff. Not only do you have confidence in your own abilities in a very general way, but it gives you confidence in specific knowledge. Next time your boss says, no, that way doesn't work, do it my way, you say, no, You know, it does work, and I can do it on demand. Don't tell me it doesn't work. I've done it. Maybe you can't do it, but I've done it. Don't tell me it's not possible to do. Anime Neo, you're awesome, okay? Don't let anybody sort of take that fire, you know? In your 20s, like I said, in your 20s, you got a lot of great things going for you. You got unbridled energy. You got a lot of conviction, especially, like I said, if you couple that with the rebellious sort of attitude. Why do we have to do it this way? Why can't we do it that way? You actually have the ability to go out and do something about that, as opposed to a lot of 30, 40, and 50-year-olds that talk like that, but then they never feel like doing it. And they just, maybe even if they have more of the opportunity to do it, they just don't, because it's risky and it's hard and it takes energy. You know, you're the one that actually can do that. You know, there's strengths and weaknesses of being different ages. That's the advantage you guys have when you're young, in your 20s. That's what you have over people like me. You can go out and do this stuff, whereas I'm just like, no, I'm too tired. I don't do that. I do this. You know, I'm lazy and I'm comfortable, and, you know, why change things now, right? That's the attitude of when you're older. Okay, wouldn't it be great if you could combine the sort of knowledge and experience that you get with age with the fire and passion of like an energy of youth? Wouldn't that be amazing? That'd be a formidable combination. Sorry, I can't really speak very well today. I'm tripping over my words. But yes. Another thing that you can do, coming back to the theme of this live stream originally, which was how to keep your job, okay? And this might seem kind of like a weird tip, but it's go where they like you, go where they appreciate you. As I said earlier, the thing about getting a job, a big component to whether that happens or not is random chance. You have control to a degree over what you do. You have a control to a degree of the places you apply to, right? But the thing is, you might work one place and they don't really appreciate you. Partly because of what I mentioned earlier. Maybe you're not quite like the boss or the other coworkers. Maybe they all have a little clique going and you're not really part of that because you're a different type of person. But then you get a job somewhere else and the boss is just like you. All the people there like you, they appreciate you. It's a much more favorable environment. You know, and it can be hard jumping from something that, like a job you have that might be secure, to finding a place where they appreciate you more. It can be scary, it can be hard, it can take time. But like I described when I was moving from the railroad out to other things, was ultimately it's the right move. You know? That's an example of something you can do in your 20s that you might not want to do when you're in your 40s. You want to change careers. But in your 20s, you can. It's a lot easier. It doesn't feel easy, but it's a lot easier than it will be later on. Same with things like going back to school. You know, you can go back to school in your 20s. It's not as hard as it will be if you go back to school in your 40s. How to not quit when my boss annoys me? Great question. Obviously, it depends on how much they annoy you, and it depends how often they annoy you, and if it's always the same issues coming up over and over again. I'm probably not the best person to answer that because I've quit several jobs, basically because of my boss in my career. Not like, like I didn't do the, the YouTube video quit, the spectacular sort of quit. You go and you defile the boss's desk and bring in your brass band to like enforce what you're saying and then march right out the front door. Nothing like that. But some situations you can salvage. You know, if people appreciate you, you can salvage the situation. You just had a bad day, you know. Life goes on, you smooth it over. Might take a couple of days, but you know, you gradually get back to the status quo. There's no awkwardness, right? But you will get those times when your job sucks. It just sucks. And it's the same issues coming over and over again. It's the same people causing them over and over again. And despite your best efforts, you might have tried to address them several different ways to no avail. And, you know, it's just time to move on. So the only thing I can really say is that you, like I said earlier, you take the anger and the frustration and you channel that into the impetus, the get up and go to start looking for another job. Okay. It takes work. It takes work to dust off your resume, to, you know, create a network on LinkedIn or other social media, to reach out to hiring managers, to do informational interviews, to do things like this. It takes energy and effort to do that stuff. And sometimes it's intimidating, it's not enjoyable, and it's not something you want to do. So you really need that drive to push you to do it, right? So you could take that anger and frustration, don't just stew in it, channel it into making a positive change, doing a job search or something like that. Okay. That's the only thing I can really recommend. Okay. And this is all I know this varies based on what type of personality you have. I could give you advice for like an introvert like me, but that will not be the right thing to do for if you're an extrovert, you know, or you're a more intuitive person or you're a more literal person. I mean, there's different sides to it. What's your thought of exit interviews? I've done probably not 100 exit interviews, but close to it. Probably like 70 at least. Exit interviews. Well, look, a lot of times it's not honest. You know, even when people are leaving, they're like halfway out the door. They're not really going to say what the issue was because, depending on where you are, like I'm in Winnipeg, Canada. Winnipeg, Canada, it's a city. It's got a population of about 700,000. So it's big and it's small at the same time. So if you work in a certain industry, in this environment, if you're confining yourself to that industry, it's not so big that you can afford to piss people off and burn bridges, you know, because there's only so many employers in this region or, you know, economic region. And Winnipeg is surrounded by like several hundred miles, like 1,000 kilometers of nothing. No offense to the people that live in little villages outside, but there's no other major cities within like hundreds and hundreds of kilometers. So you're kind of stuck here. You either make a big move or you're here. And so people are not, I mean, you've already decided to leave. You're already leaving. Why burn your bridges on the way out if you don't need to? Right? So people rarely are honest in my experience. You can tell that most people leave because of personal issues. They don't get along with their boss. They don't get along with their coworkers. You know? And the exit interview is just a way for the employer to say, like, so, why are you leaving? And, you know, you make up some reason. Oh, the money's not as good as I could get somewhere else. They're like, oh, okay. Right? And then they write that down, right? Now, if the employee says, oh, I'm leaving because of him, right? You know, that person, you know, whatever your name is, mentioned by name, they're a jackass. I'm leaving because of them. They drove me away, right? You know what their problem is? They don't know how to do their job. They're lazy. They're offensive. You know, they can't manage people. Like, you know, the employers are going to like write all that down. I mean, that's going to create some minor issues, right? So some people keep it real and they do that, but a lot of people don't. because they don't want, on top of them leaving their job, they don't want their employer like mad at them, wanting to blacklist them, that kind of thing. What I used to do with the exit interviews, I'd almost try and use it as a counseling session and say like, look, because I was the one representing the employer and saying like, look, is there, like, I'm sorry to hear that, blah, like that kind of stuff, that, yeah, you're right. That's not good. We did a bad job there. We dropped the ball, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. And then maybe people open up a little bit more, but anyway, they're just, it's like a lot of things in HR. They're usually almost completely ineffective. Hiring is almost completely ineffective. Performance evaluations are almost completely ineffective. Exit interviews are almost completely ineffective. Everyone knows this. The problem is that there's no obvious substitute for them. That's why people persist with these things. Blizzar says, what do you suggest is the best way to make money being a student online? Well, that's getting into the Let's Talk Business podcast that I do on Sundays. But short answer is, like I've advocated a lot for people to try starting some kind of entrepreneurial venture. And unlike what a lot of people seem to think, it really doesn't take hardly any money to do this. You go online, you go on social networking, you use it to connect to what you feel is your target market, people that would be potential customers of whatever you might offer, whether it's a product or a service, and try to reach them, try to sell something. Say, look, hey, I've got this. Anyone interested? And if nobody contacts you, that tells you something. If you get inundated with people saying, hey, I want one of those, right? Then it's like, oh, okay. Okay, now, then you have generally a simpler problem, which is all I've got to do now is create that thing. Because I got a whole bunch of people lined up with their wallets open, with their money in their hands saying, here, give me one. Right? You could even take steps like you could pre-sell it, the way that, stores do, like Amazon. You pay up front and then they send you the product, right? So that's the ultimate test of if people are willing to buy this thing that you're offering, okay? So if you can do that and people say, okay, I'll order it. Then you create some little way for them to send you money, like PayPal or whatever. And all of a sudden you got money coming in, which can fund the thing that you have to create now and deliver to them. Okay. So that's a model that I recommend. Okay. You're tackling the hardest challenge first, which is not creating the thing. It's trying to sell the thing. That's a much harder challenge. Anybody can create a thing. And that's what we see a lot of people do when they start businesses. They say, I think there should be a thing that does this. Surely people will buy it. If I build it, they will come, right? Surely they will. Usually that means they won't. Because the problem is that they don't see the value in it that you do. People don't want the things they should want. It's as simple as that. They should want it, but they don't. Right? So the much bigger challenge is, can you sell the thing that you're thinking of? Right? So what a lot of people do is they fail by like raising all this money to create this thing. And then once they've spent all their money and they've created this thing, they then find only then that they can't sell it. And then they're done. And it's a failure. Right? So you get to avoid all of the racking up loans that you have to repay. You get to avoid all the overcoming technical challenges to create the thing. And you jump right to, can I sell it? Okay, it's also the best way to determine can you sell it if you actually require people to buy it. Not just say they're interested, but to actually send you their money. Okay. Now look, if they send you your money and you just can't create the thing that you're wanting, and just it doesn't work out, you just refund everybody and that's it. No harm done. You apologize, but it was a hell of a learning experience, and that's the first step to being independently financially prosperous, where you're your own boss. You make a lot of money. You do it on your own terms. You don't have to rely on anybody to give you a job or to stand between you and your source of income. So that's why I suggest people do it. If you get that experience in your 20s, even if it fails, okay, you will learn so much. And a lot of times, if you combine that with a lot of experience stuff later on, it becomes very, very powerful. If you want to learn more, check out my live stream as I do on Sundays called Let's Talk Business, where that's one of the things that we talk about regularly, that kind of thing. Would you say it's better to work for startups or for big companies? Well, if I had to choose one, I would say startups, but I would say both. Like, you should have the experience of both. You will learn a ton working for both. And not just those two extremes, but also small and medium-sized business in the middle. That's like, in my experience, that's been the best of both worlds. I've worked in startups, I've worked in blue chip companies, and I've worked in small, medium-sized business, like a company that has 100 employees. Okay, or even 50. That's really the sweet spot. And something like, well, the statistic for Canada and the US was 85%. 85% of people that have jobs work in small business, not in big business. If you're in a city, you see those big buildings downtown, only 15% of people that have jobs are working in those companies. Everybody else is working in the smaller companies, the ones that are not nearly as visible, but they're there. If you look for them, you can find them everywhere. But they're there. And don't take my word for this. Go look it up. Whatever country you're in, your government will publish economic statistics for your region, and you can easily verify this. You can look this up. You can see the average amount of money those companies make, the average amount of employees they have, all that kind of stuff. That's usually provided for free by the government. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay. For those who want to go deeper, I have to do this at some point, so I'm going to do it now. For those who want to go deeper, there's a couple of things you can do. Number one, you can join my channel. You get a free video every week, and you also get priority in terms of me responding to questions and things like that. If you are unemployed or you're between jobs and you want to take more control of your job search, you want to learn how to do job search better, I have a course called Get Hired, which is on the screen there. This is the course. There's a link in the description if you are interested. Basically, I take all my advice, I put it all in one place, and it's a sort of a step-by-step process. And it doesn't just talk about one method of getting jobs, it talks about several. So that's something that if you are interested, that can help. A lot of people have bought that. I've had like about 150 people buy that course and go through it. And there's a lot of positive feedback. So check that out. Alternatively, if you're interested more on the business side, like for example, the topic we were just discussing, like how to start a business or how to use social networking to make money. Anytime the word making money comes into the conversation, that's business. Okay. If you have an artistic sort of venture, you want to be a musician or you want to be an artist or you want to be, like whatever, any kind of artistic kind of thing. The moment you want to try and make money with that, now you're in the world of business, my friend. You have to think about marketing, you have to think about operations, you have to know the basics of accounting and stuff like that. So if that's you, if you're looking to learn about that, I have a course that's this course, and it's for a very specific purpose. It's for people that want to learn business. They don't want to learn sort of the coffee shop excuse for business where you get those like self-help books, but you want to learn actual business, okay? This course is called the $100 MBA. And I have to have a coughing fit right now, so excuse me. Oh, that was gnarly. Time for some Red Bull. And this is a course. What it does is it covers the same material that you cover in a full-blown university, brick and mortar MBA program, the Masters of Business Administration. Now it's a self-study thing, okay? So you basically get a reading list, you get the textbooks, and the textbooks are textbooks that are used in universities all over the world, and a lot of really reputable universities, such as Harvard in their MBA program. And you read the books yourself, and there's no evaluations, no assignments, no exercises, no tests, no exams. You do the entire thing on your own terms. You can go as deep as you want, or you could just get a very superficial exposure to it, whatever you want to get out of it, okay? It's unaccredited, but it covers the exact same material. And I provide several videos that guide you through the different areas. I do overviews of it, and I also give you sort of my insights into each of the topics, things like marketing, accounting, finance, HR, operations management, so on. So if that's of any interest to you, check that out. There's a link in the description. If you are thinking of having your own business, or you want to investigate that kind of stuff, you want to learn about it, this is kind of the thing that I wished I had when I was in my 20s. So if that's of any use to you, check it out. Can you explain why the medium-sized companies are better? Is it because there's less exploitation? No, it's because you get sort of the best of both worlds. On the one hand, it's not some amateur operation that may not pay off, okay? The problem with startups is that there's no rules. Now, that can be an advantage, but it can also be a disadvantage. There's no work-life balance. There's, a lot of startups are mainly in the phase where they're not revenue positive. Okay, they're sort of in the seed phase and the ramp up phase, and that's not really business. That's kind of an experiment or a hobby at that point. Maybe they're living on borrowed money, essentially. Okay, medium-sized business, usually they're profitable. I mean, it's hard to grow to be medium-sized business when you're unprofitable. It just, usually you don't see that. It doesn't mean that, the company can't have fallen on hard times or something, but usually they're profitable. They're dealing with real money. They have their act together. They know what they're doing. They have a proven business model, and they're just working it, okay? And trying to improve it. So they have their act together, but they are not as formalized or as centralized as a larger organization. In a larger organization, they are so big that you're doing like you're a tiny piece of a giant machine. And as a result, you don't really see the reality of what's going on. Like, unless you're an executive or something, you can maybe start to see that. But, most other people, you're just deep down in the bowels of the company, and you're insulated from the reality of what the company does. And as a result, the environment is not a reflection of reality. It's usually it turns into some weird thing that's put in place by people that don't know the realities of what's going on. In a medium-sized company, the other advantage is that, there are exceptions to this, but generally it's more like, I hate this expression, but it's more like a family, in the sense that they don't have people to stand over you all the time to verify you're doing your job. You are trusted a lot more, generally speaking. You are autonomous a lot more than you would be. That was the thing that struck me when I went from sort of corporate career to coming down to small, medium business. You would have technicians, for example, that they would go off in a truck and they would go do their job. They would go talk to the customer. They would arrange all the paperwork. They would even drum up future sales. All unsupervised, all just relying on that person to do their job. They leave the property, they do whatever, they come back. They're not checked up on. So there's a lot more trust. And like everyone in the company kind of worked like that, the main company that I was in. So that's really cool. I've never seen a situation where a boss said to their workers, they came to them, and I've told this story before, but they came to their workers on a Friday afternoon and said, guys, I need a lot of you guys to work overtime. You need to stay until this job is done. I'm sorry. And the workers said, sure, no problem. You got it. And that blew me away because having worked in a corporate career, there's a very us and them sort of mentality. And, the workers hate the managers despise the workers. They sort of treat them like slaves and exploit them. That totally blew me away. And the reason why the workers did that was because if a worker was sick one day, they call in sick to the boss and they say, I'm sorry, I can't come in. I got the flu. The boss says, no problem. Not a problem. Take as much time as you need. Come back when you're ready. It's like a give and take relationship. Because when you only have like 20 people, 30 people, 50 people, you need to behave like that, or else the whole thing fails. Okay. Now, obviously there's going to be exceptions and it's going to vary by industry, but that's what I saw. Never in any other situation have I seen that. Even in startups, people don't operate like that. There's still a lot of contention. There's still a lot of mistrust. People being worked to the point where they dropped almost. So, I recommend people check out medium-sized business. And remember, only 15% of people are working in large business, okay? They're much more visible, so it seems like there's a lot more, but they're not. And as I say, don't take my word for this. Go look it up in your country or region. You will find the majority of people do not work in big business. They work in small, medium-sized business. That's the backbone of the world's economies, really. So check it out. Okay. And the way you get hired for those is also a little bit different. Usually they won't have the money or the resources to be posting jobs publicly. That's more networking. Okay. A higher proportion of it will be networking. Anyway, so that's what I have to say about that. Would you say that a degree is necessary to succeed in the corporate world? Well, yes and no. It depends what we're talking about. The thing about the corporate world, meaning large enterprise, is that they have much more formal requirements. Once again, in a medium-sized business, generally there's not as many rules. So you could come to that job with a lot of experience, or you could come to that job with a degree, or you could come to that job with, just having great personal traits. It depends. It depends what we're talking about. Obviously, in a lot of regulated industries like engineering, medicine, anything that you require a certification, obviously there's no way getting around that, right? But you can find that out very simply. And I always thought that the large companies were destroying the work-life balance of people, not startups. Well, you need to work for a startup then. I think the general rule is that you never work as hard as when you work in a startup. The catch is that if you're a founder of a startup, it doesn't feel like work because you're doing what you decide to do. So that doesn't feel as much like work. You're not being dictated and told, no, you have to do this and you can't go home until this. It's not like that. It's more self-imposed. But you want to talk about work hours, go check out some successful startups. There's a lot of wannabe startups that don't get that. And they never make any money and they fail pretty quickly. And that's where people take weekends off and they work 9 to 5. It's like, no, you don't get it. If you're doing something, you have to do it. And it can be all consuming in the beginning. Okay? So listen, don't listen to what I say on this. Start a startup. Doesn't take any money. You know? Like, this is the thing. When it comes to this stuff, you can get advice from me, you can get advice from other people, and I'm sure some of it will contradict. That's just how it goes. But how do you know? Well, you do it yourself. If it's something important, do it yourself. Get a job in a medium-sized company or go in that direction, okay? You know, as I said, that's how you find out for sure, is by doing it yourself, okay? And some people are going to turn around and say, well, that's not practical. It's like, yeah, well, you're in your 20s. Your whole life is before you. You can choose the path that your life goes down. You know, even if you try something, you stick your toe in the water, maybe it doesn't work out. 6 months later, you decide, it's not for me. At least now you know what you're getting into. Okay. That knowledge will serve you later in life when maybe an opportunity opens up to maybe join a startup. You now know what you're getting into, okay? Or somebody wants you to invest in a startup, or someone wants you to assist a startup or do business with a startup. You now have some hard experience. You know what you're doing. So, now's the time to try this stuff. What's the harm? Go about it in an intelligent way. Do your research. But if it's something you're interested in, it's worth going for it. Anyway, we're going to have to wrap this up pretty soon. There's still 24 of you guys here. I'm quite impressed that you joined me on this sort of rambling trip that I went on today. People have been asking some great questions. Thank you for asking the questions and the participation. That's what keeps me doing these. My live streams are Wednesday and Sunday. I might be changing the time of day that I do the startups just as an experiment. So that may change, but on Wednesdays and Sundays, join me on these live streams and ask questions. And also, they are archived on my second channel. So hopefully you know this. I have a second channel, The Company's Expert 2. Okay? And if you've never heard of this, go there right now to The Company's Expert 2 and subscribe. But that's where this live stream is going to end up. And that's where all my other ones are. So if you are interested at all, you can check those out. But yeah, and I also have some other stuff on there too. So yeah, and a shout out to all my members, my Patreons, and everybody who's taken my course. That's great. I know those courses have helped quite a few people, depending on what your goals are. So yeah. So thank you, Anime Neo, for your kind words. And the mind also. I love your names. It's good to make your mark and have something of character. So thank you for joining me today. You guys are awesome. And I wish you all the best. And you'll hopefully feel free to join me next time on Sunday, where we have a live stream called Just Let's Talk Business. And hopefully I'll be able to speak better then. I don't know what's going on, but maybe it's the Red Bull messing with my mind. But join me for that if you're interested in business and entrepreneurial economy and that kind of stuff. Other than that, I will see you guys next week on Wednesday for the next episode of this live stream where we talk about employment. Thanks so much. Take care. I wish you all the best.